satellites?
A satellite represents a journey, information gathering, this journey around the Earth.
Welcome to Satellite Haiku.
Totally, yeah.
Welcome back to the States.
Been a couple weeks. Thanks, brother. Yeah,
Want to give us an update on the trip? I want to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, we did so much. We were there for 16 days, and it's hard to kind of summarize. We did a lot. We saw a lot of stuff. We ate a lot of food. We did a good mix of, like sightseeing. We saw a whole bunch of temples and shrines and castles, and then they have this cool thing there. A few of them. I guess it's not just Japan. I think Abu Dhabi has one. It's called Team Lab, and they're basically like these immersive art. It's like, imagine Burning Man, but like for families.
Huh.
You know what I mean? Like they're these kind of immersive, maybe that's not the right analogy, these immersive art installations, and they have different themes. So in Japan, there's 3 of them. I think there may be more, but we saw 3 of them. Team Lab Planets, Team Lab Gardens, and Team Lab Borderless. And what they are, like the gardens one's outdoor, the other 2 are in these giant indoor spaces, and they're made of multiple rooms, and you go into a room, and like the Planets one is super cool. You take off your shoes right at the beginning because there's parts of it where you're wading through water, even though it's indoors. And they have like lights doing interesting things with the water. And then there's another room where you walk through this sort of cushioned room, but it's very dark. You can't really see. So you're just having this tactile experience of your feet and your body walking across this uneven, cushioned, sort of knobbly cushioned floor, like it's not smooth, and trying to make it to the other side in this dark room, and you're very focused on the physical sensation of walking across this floor in the dark. And then in the next room, you're like wading through water, or there was an uphill part where the water was pouring down, and you're kind of walking up a stream. Super cool. So, I mean, that's one of the highlights of the trip, is this Team Lab Borderless thing. It was like, I said to my wife that there were parts of it that were like the best parts of being on psychedelics.
Oh, okay.
Like there was this room with these like rope light kind of hung from ceiling to floor, and they had, and it was just, you're walking through curtains of these rope lights. They're just like filling the room, and you're walking through kind of a maze of them, and the floor is mirrored, and the walls are mirrored, and the ceiling's mirrored. And so this light, you're in this room of light that's sparkling, and it's almost like picture the static on a television from the olden days. Remember the days of yore, like that static. Imagine being like immersed in that static. And that's what it felt like. It's like just you're walking through this sparkly kind of staticky light and just totally immersed. It was just super cool. So anyway, that's one highlight from the trip.
Do you know if that, because we in Phoenix, at the Phoenix Art Museum, we had a long-term installation maybe for the whole year by, can't pronounce her name, but Yayoi Kusama. Have you heard of her? Was that?
Yeah. We have one here, Kusama, also in the Asian Art Museum, and she had a months-long kind of featured exhibit here too.
But your description of that room though sounded very much like the one in Phoenix, where there were she used mirrors and lights to create this like never-ending, like you're almost floating through space. Was that? Do you think it was a Kusama?
I don't know if she was. That's a good question. You're right. It is reminiscent of her work, and I wouldn't be surprised to find out she was heavily involved in designing some of these pieces. I don't know. Is she still alive? I think she is, right?
Yeah, I think she is, and I think she has. I remember reading her bio, and she had committed herself to, like, I don't know, you want to use the word asylum, but like a psych ward, because she had so many hallucinations, and many of her works are her trying to explore the difference between her hallucinations and like normal kind of perception, you know. I use the word normal, you know, but yeah, loosely. But yeah, really
normal as in the norm, the average, not normal as a value judgment.
Right. Well, what's interesting about her work and maybe her inquiry is, I mean, is it normal because that's what everyone else has? And does she have periods where she doesn't see the hallucinations and therefore considers that normal? And you know what I mean? I'd be curious to like see a documentary about her where she's just discussing like her experience of having her mind, her brain be the way it is, you know?
It makes, I don't know, for some reason it made me think of synesthesia, which is definitely outside the norm. So we're kind of playing with the definition of the word normal here. I think what we mean is really just the common experience, right? Not like some judgment about what's right or wrong. But I had a designer who worked for me at a previous job who was a synesthete, super interesting guy, and I'm
actually not familiar.
I envy that.
What's that? Can you talk a little bit about that?
The synesthetes are the ones who their senses cross wires, so like they experience numbers having a taste, for example, or they experience like colors having a smell or a sound. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Dr.
There's been some famous synesthetes in synesthetic artists over the years, but
interesting.
What a cool experience of the world that would be, right?
Now, here's the question: is how
they'll
would
be
you,
like, oh, the number 4 has a burnt smell, like or whatever, you know, like that kind of thing.
How would you find out? Like, how long would it take to figure out that you had that condition? You know what I mean? Like, would it be evident from a young age, or how?
I mean, I've heard synesthetes talk about that very thing, and they'll mention like having childhood conversations and being like, you know, about the 4 having a burnt smell or something, and people are like, what? You know, like, and then little kids say the craziest things. So, like, I could imagine when you're really little, a kid saying something like that, and you're a parent, and you're just like, okay. Yeah. But then, you know, like, if it persists, then you're like, oh, okay, so, you've said that for years now, and then, you know, then it becomes, or, you know, like friends, right? Like, when you have a conversation with your friend, and you're trying to, like, anchor yourselves on some part of reality, and you're like, hey, you know that, isn't it crazy how what number 4 smells like? The number 4 smell, you know, and your friend would be like, what the fuck are you talking about, right? Like it's that kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, what's weird is that even that statement, isn't it crazy that what the number 4 smells like? That would imply that you smell it and it's beyond sort of the norm, or it's like.
Well, I mean, crazy, like, isn't it weird, kind of wild? Like, you know, we use that expression all the time. Like, isn't it wild? Like what? You know, that people eat blah, 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 right? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
but it might
we do X, Y, Z, right? Like, we use crazy just to mean, like,
sure.
Weird, that's all I meant, yeah.
What I'm sort of hinting at is, like, let's say you were colorblind and every red apple looked green, right?
Yeah.
Or brown. You wouldn't necessarily, it would take, like, a while for someone else to, and, like, let's go to, like, Helen Keller, for instance. Like, how could it boggles the mind that Helen Keller could come to understand the world without sight and hearing. And for instance, like her teacher would use like sensory things like cold or hot or soft or warm, and then like taught her words with vibration and stuff. But it's hard to imagine, because like if someone says that's red, like what would red mean to someone who can never see? You know, like what?
Totally.
It's almost like you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. I thought of a few things as you were saying that. One is like, just in every sort of like deep discussion of what consciousness is, right? Like I listened to this whole podcast recently. Sam Harris's wife, Annika Harris has a podcast called Lights On, and you know, she's more of a journalist than a scientist or whatever, but so she interviews all these different kind of scientists, meditation teachers, about consciousness, because she has some thoughts on, you know, consciousness may be a fundamental property of the universe or whatever, fabric of the universe. And, you know, some branches of physics and stuff are sort of coming around to this idea that consciousness might underlie everything. Well, in every conversation about color is often used as sort of a test case, right? Like your experience of red, I have no idea whether your experience of the color red is anything like my experience of the color red. I mean, the only evidence I have is that we both stop at red lights and things like that. Like, so you see something consistently and I see something consistently, but I have no idea, whether your actual experience, you can't explain the experience of red to somebody else, right? At all. Nobody can. So like your blindness thing, like Helen Keller, like that takes it to a whole other level. But like, because if you're trying to communicate to a blind person what the experience of red is, like, what are you're going to, like you said, you're going to go, well, maybe warmth. I'll just hold her hand over a light bulb or something. And that's red, I guess. Like for some reason, you and I might have some association with red that's warmth, maybe, like because fire, I don't know. Who knows?
Well, you could also imagine that, if let's say I'm Helen Keller and I've reached a certain level of understanding and I'm able to communicate through writing and speeches, but it's possible that like there's layers of those types of sensory experiences that just are meaningless or have like the quotient of relevancy quotient is really zero because she isn't going to write like a poem about the red apple because it just what's the point,
Right.
Here's an interesting side question: is I used to wonder because I was a big Stevie Wonder fan back in the '80s, and I used to wonder. I saw Stevie Wonder come out to do a show, and he was like dressed in this really interesting outfit with his hair in a certain way, and I was like, does he really care? Like what he's wearing, like what you know what I mean? Like does he?
Right.
Does he like? I know unless there's a feedback loop, like people are like, "Wow, I like that shirt."
Yeah.
What does it really matter as long as it's comfortable, right? Like
for sure, yeah.
It's kind of an interesting question. Like
it is an interesting.
Why
question,
would you care? Like why would you?
Right. Yeah, unless there's a feedback loop. I mean, it's an interesting. You have this opportunity to be totally liberated from caring.
Like, would you like how we spend time on our hair and like maybe shaving? What would be the point?
Hey.
Sorry.
I don't spend any time on my hair except shaving it off. Anyway, sorry.
But that's time.
Yeah,
but
okay.
You're preparing your hair in a certain way. But like,
sure.
If you really couldn't ever see yourself, you wouldn't be like, wow, I like the way I look. Like you just,
right.
What would be the sort of point of wasting time trying to make yourself look a certain way, other than the feedback loop?
Totally. The closest thing I can think of to being liberated from that is like times that I've been, backpacking or something for an extended period and I didn't see my own reflection for a long time. And then you come back to civilization. It's like the first time I have the chance to encounter a mirror, I've had that thought like, well, what if I just don't look? Like I haven't seen my reflection so long. I could just stop looking at my reflection. And then I experienced that thought as a kind of freedom. Like, oh wait, I could be free of caring what I look like at all.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
It's funny.
I kind of like I understand that on the level of like dress, like for instance, if what was his name? There was the photographer in New York that had all the in our building that had all the golden retrievers.
Oh,
you know, he was a fashion guy.
Yeah.
So he
lived above us, right?
Yeah,
that guy.
No, he lived somewhere on our block.
I'm thinking of. Yeah.
And anyway, so he famous fashion photographer. I'll think of his name in a second. But he used to wear khaki pants and a black T-shirt every day. Mm-hmm. And I remember asking him once because I would walk the pugs, and so I would like sometimes bump into him. He'd be standing there, and I was just like, "Hey, man, like you." And he said, "Well, I work with like Tommy Hilfiger and Yves Saint Laurent. And it's like it would be silly for me to like try to dress up because then they would just be like, ugh." So I just wear this as a uniform, and it's really practical because when I look in the screen, it doesn't reflect. My shirt doesn't reflect back. So he's like, it's like a uniform. And then I was like,
you always wear a black T-shirt for this podcast.
Every once in a while,
I've worn this shirt too many times, but really the main reason is this room is a little chilly, and I'll be wearing a T-shirt, and I'll throw on this layer in order just to do this podcast. So I've worn this shirt a bunch of times, and a blue hoodie that I have. But yeah, you have that black. You're like Steve Jobs of our podcast because he also was a guy who had the uniform.
He did something I never do, which is I can't stand the feeling of a turtleneck.
Oh, he had the mock turtleneck. He made the mock
Oof.
turtleneck kind of popular. Well, actually, he didn't make it popular. He extended its life because the mock turtleneck had already gone away.
Yeah, I think it was 80s, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the late 80s, early 90s was the mock turtleneck. Yeah.
Do you remember
And,
epaulettes
Oh, yeah.
in the 80s? Like they were like pilot.
Yeah.
Like it was.
I had shirts with not like full on epaulettes, but like little button, like they they get buttons on the shoulders with the little strappy thing. Yeah,
I can't remember the name of
sort of mock epaulettes. Yeah,
I can't remember the name of the. There was a brand, and I used to have this sort of rain jacket or like a windbreaker.
Members only,
and it had these
Yeah,
epaulettes, and I was
Hell
like,
yeah.
these are damn cool. Like these are.
Hell
I feel like a
dude.
pilot. I feel
Yeah.
like a fighter pilot or something.
And I see members only jackets still once in a while. I think they've made like a minor comeback a little bit. Yeah.
You know what was weird is
Like it hasn't gone away completely. The brand is still in business somehow. It's probably owned by like a hedge fund at this point or something. But
you know what's really bizarre? Like, do you remember that stone-washed? What was the name of those jeans?
Girbeau?
No,
Jordache?
Jordache or like a Vanderbilt, like Victoria.
Oh,
what's
yeah,
it?
Gloria Vanderbilt.
Gloria
Yeah,
Vanderbilt. And there was like my sisters used to like long for these jeans, and my mom was like, "They're way too expensive," because they're like twice as much.
I remember your mom got mad at your sister. I don't think I witnessed this, but I feel like you told me a story where your sister was wearing jeans with like intentionally made with holes in them or whatever, ripped jeans.
Oh yeah.
And your mom just was so offended by that idea of like ripped clothing as fashion,
Yeah.
given like people deprived of clothing in the world that, like don't have the privilege or luxury of having, I don't know. I think, like, I'm sure there's a lot wrapped up in that about like you're mocking those people, or you're mocking the idea that you can just, I don't know. Yeah.
Well,
anyway,
do you remember? I think Ben Stiller, like mines that comedic vein with Derelicht. Remember Derelicht?
Yeah.
The Zoolander.
Yeah.
It's like okay. Well, and I did that. I remember my mom was horrified because basically in the early 90s.
You used to patch your jeans all the time. Like you had all kinds of patches. Like,
in fact, I got in the biggest.
That was
fight.
like one of your things. Was the patches on your jeans became a thing. You were sort of a signature Milo fashion thing.
I did. I got in the biggest fight with my dad because you were meeting with your dad. We had come down from New York and we were going to take the train back from Trenton. So my dad had promised to give us a ride.
Yeah.
It was like some point where we lived in New York. So, and I was working on patching my jeans with my mom's sewing machine. Mm-hmm. And my dad was really stressed about some conflict he had with his church, with the church. Like he was working for the church. So he was pretty stressed and he was sitting in there writing emails like all day long. And I remember I think maybe once or twice you called to say, hey, the train was every 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And you called once or twice to say, hey, let's take the 4:30 because my dad and I are doing something. So I just was like, hey, Dad, we're going to do the 4:30. And then I said, hey, Dad, we're going to do the 5. And he came storming in.
And you were chill about that kind of thing.
Yeah. He came storming in. And all I remember is that what infuriated him is that I was patching my pants. And he thought it was a stupid waste of time. And I remember he grabbed the pants. They were in the sewing machine and he started pulling them. And I was screaming, hey, you're ripping my pants. And it was just, we went face to face and it was the worst fight we've ever had. And it was over the patching of these pants. For some reason.
Of course, it wasn't over the patching. It was something else in there, but that was the ostensible reason for the fight. Yeah.
I mean, he thought that we were stringing him along, like that he couldn't focus.
Well, he might have just been like losing his shit about, like there was something in there that was agitated, and that the pants became the convenient vehicle for venting that.
And I think what it was that he was really stressed, and the commitment that he had made to drive us was getting more and more sort of annoying because it, like maybe he really didn't have time, and he was, or like whatever he was doing was taking too long, and he was mad about that. Anyway, long story short, I do remember that like the worst fight I've ever had with my dad was over. I
remember those face-to-face fights. Like I had one or two of those with my dad where you're like nose to nose almost. I remember one of those devolving into my dad going, "You're spitting on me, you're spitting on me," and I was like, "You're spitting on me," because our faces were so close to each other.
I remember trying to, so my dad and I at the time had a totally philosophical, like totally like irreconcilable difference around, I wanted sort of to increasingly become more chill about the world. And he felt like anger was dynamism. Like things got done when you were angry and you drove things forward. And I was like, no, man. Like, so we had this like, he's so chill now, you know?
Yeah,
and,
he's so chill now. It's hard to even picture that.
Hard to picture that, but he really...
Picture them having that. But I remember your dad getting quite worked up in certain contexts, yeah.
Well, one of the things, for instance, he became a minister, like, and so, a big part of his thing was to like organize youth groups, and he had a South Africa conference for youth or something. Yeah. He was really into that kind of organizational aspect of being a minister. Yeah, almost pastoral. And I remember one of our friends had moved out to Denver to open a new, like we called it, happy-clappy church, like a church where you play guitars and sing, like, you know. Yeah.
Right. And there were, in a contrast to like the sort of like the more orthodox kind of rigid doctrine of church, right? Right. Like, like it wouldn't be happy-clappy if there wasn't that other thing it was sort of a response to.
So, so I was talking to my dad about this, and I was friends with this guy who had gone out to Denver with a guitar. And there was a circle, like, you know how there was like Glenview Circle, and like there were like the Toronto, or Kitchener, there's one, and like, I think so they have these like little communities that are built around a church and a school for the Swedenborgian Church. And there was a group that had built one of those way back in Denver. It was like a suburb of Denver. And they were furious and hurt that the church sent someone to Boulder to open a new guitar church when they were like, why don't you send us like a pastor?
We already got the church, like send us the congregation that you would have.
Exactly. So my dad and I were talking about that, and he was furious. He kept saying this JFK quote about, it's not, the young people of the church are fleeing. I would say, well, the young people of the church are fleeing because they're not getting what they want. And he goes, they should be saying, what can I do for the church, not what can the church do for me? And I was like, with that attitude, they're not going to come. You're not, you know what I mean? Like, you got to like figure out a way to inspire, not to
I remember a novel that you and I read years ago, and I remember like the quote that I called The Wrestler's Cruel Study, I think.
Yeah.
And there's one quote in the book that I often remember, which is, it's just somebody saying, who goes to church anymore? Kooks and old people.
Oh.
Right? Like that was a line from one of the characters. But I still remember that line because I think I read that book right around the time that I was sort of, you know, completely disconnecting from the church.
Was that Stephen Dobbins? Was that
Stephen Dobbins, yeah. I don't know if he ever wrote much else. I don't know. I don't think I ever read anything else by him.
All I do remember is, and I really, really loved this sort of kind of raucous, fun, just like really colorful sort of cast of characters and interesting sort of. But I do remember that afterwards, and I was just briefly, you know, looking for his name and things. I remember that he was, I think, either fired or like in some way censured for, he was teaching at Syracuse or Rochester or something. And he was at a cocktail party with some students and other professors. And one of the students said something to him, and he threw his drink in her face.
Oh, wow.
And I remember not knowing why, like I don't have any other details, but I never forgot that Stephen Dobbins got in trouble as a professor.
Maybe that's why his career dissolved. Interesting.
And I felt like, is it? It's not illegal to throw your drink in someone's face. It's certainly socially unacceptable.
It might be assault. I guess it could be. I don't know. Because spitting in somebody's face is people have been charged with assault for doing that.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah. And certainly there's like different rules. Like if you're a professor with a student, the university might have like...
Sure, you might just get fired. It might not be illegal, but you know, it might be like grounds for firing you or something. I don't know. The thing that he said about the churches, like wanting the congregation, like the sort of the competitive, the church, it made me think of the church as, like, do you ever see the play or the movie, The Big Kahuna?
No.
It's kind of, I can't remember who the cast is of the movie, but it's originally from a stage play. And the premise of it is like these sales guys are going to this trade show or conference, and the three of them have a hotel room together, and it's like two sort of veteran sales dudes and one young upstart sales guy for this company. He's a young, kind of energetic guy. And basically the idea is their business is kind of like on the line. Like it's sort of like, this is the make it or break it moment for their business, is whether they can land a big customer at this conference. And they have this guy in mind that they're trying to court. They're trying to attract this one guy, the big kahuna.
Okay.
They refer to him as. And so they, in their hotel suite, they host a party, and they invite a bunch of people, including this big kahuna. And their idea is like, this guy's going to show up. We're going to wine and dine him. We're going to show him a really good time. He's going to be at our party, and he's going to become our big new customer, and he's going to save our business. This is going to save our business, right? So they're spending a lot on this big party to attract this one guy to save it's like they're, go big or go home kind of thing. And the young guy that is with them, he's like an evangelical, like a born again Christian, right? So throughout the thing, he's trying to kind of like talk to his two coworkers about God and about faith and all this, right? And they have all these monologues and conversations about how, one of the salesmen says to him, like, you're just trying to sell your church. Like, your church is just a business like any other business. Like, listen to yourself, right? Listen to the way you're pitching it to me. It's like you're just a salesman selling any other product. It just happens to be a church in this case. Mm-hmm. And anyway, yeah. So the end of the play, I shouldn't maybe ruin it, but the end of the play, this big kahuna, they never see him at their party, and they're like, did he even come, right? And the young guy tells a story about this dude he met at their party, and he's like, oh, I talked to this guy, and it turns out it was the big kahuna. And they're like, well, you met him? Like, what did you talk about? Like, and he, of course, he talked to the guy about Jesus Christ,
Yeah.
So they're so angry. You're furious at this guy about, like, you wasted this opportunity. You met the big kahuna, and the thing you decided to talk to him about was like, what's the phrase that the born again people use about?
You've taken Jesus to save you, or have you taken Jesus?
I can't think of the actual phrase right now, but something like that. Yeah.
I'm like this kid. I like to be like that kid who, if I'm in like a room with a whole bunch of Buddhists, I like to pop the balloon just by asking like certain questions. And one of them would always be like, for the evangelicals, I would always be like, so, like, how many of them are you right now? Because there's supposedly 144,000 spots. So like,
that's the Jehovah's Witnesses. Yeah.
If you get me to come on board, then like we're going to be jostling for the same spot. And
that was what Greg Glebe had, one of those Jehovah's Witnesses working for him. The guy who used to, live in his workshop, above his workshop. This dude, he had a Jehovah's Witness working for him, and that's what he used to say to that guy. Like, why do you keep trying to recruit me to be part of your religion? Like, only 144,000 of you are going to be saved. Like, why would you want to reduce your own chances by adding more of us?
Like, I don't know how many there are, but they're constantly trying to recruit more members, and it seems sort of counterintuitive or counterproductive.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, not self-serving anyway. Maybe that's why it's so beautiful of them.
Yeah, it's true.
I had some, I think they were Jehovah's Witnesses. They were some showed up at my door here in San Francisco, a pair of them, and they knocked on my door, and I went downstairs. Like, people rarely ring my doorbell except for a package, right? So, and then they just leave it. But they rung it a couple times, so I went down, and it was this pair of people, and immediately they started talking to me about, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And one of the things they asked me was, so they were just kind of asked me about my beliefs, and I said something like, well, I think I just don't know. Like, it's a mystery. This is one of those great mysteries of the world. Like, I don't know if there's a God, and I don't know what happens after we die. Like, these are just mysteries. And they were like, well, don't you want the answer to those questions? Don't you want? And I said, Honestly, I'm pretty comfortable with mystery. Like I don't mind just the sort of like the continued questioning. I'm pretty comfortable with mystery, and they didn't know what to say to that. They were just like, oh, like we never met. Like that was just, there wasn't in their script to figure out what to say to somebody who's just comfortable with mystery.
Isn't Francis Bacon's famous line about the artist's job is not to solve anything or prove anything, it's just to deepen the mystery? I always really like that.
Yeah.
It's mysterious in and of itself. So this is along the same lines. It's not too deep of a weave, but I've been a big fan for the last 2 years of this biologist, Michael Levine. He's a Russian, born in Russia, brought to the United States as a 7-year-old, and he works at Tufts. And he has a lot of different areas of inquiry. Most famously, his postdoc or his PhD student was able to convince a cell, an optical cell, like on the tail of a tadpole, to become an eye using electrical stimuli.
I heard about that.
Yeah. And what was fascinating about that is that
because he has all these theories about stem cells and and their relationship with electrical. Electric impulses. Yeah,
surface stimulation on the surface of the cells is like massive, like transportation highway for information that we don't really think about. Like, I mean, I guess like Chinese medicine doctors are using that kind of thing to try to heal us or re-establish flow of energy. But anyway, so he has this new paper that is looking at, and he oftentimes will distill things down into like the way like a coder would look at like a packet of information being transmitted across the IP network, like the network, right? And you had like an error, like a feedback loop that's an error correction. Like you check for errors, and if it's wrong, you send it again. If it's, like that whole thing. And so he was talking about this idea of the caterpillar and the butterfly.
Okay.
How it's the same being, it's the same insect, but while it's a caterpillar, it's encoded to survive, like to thrive on eating leaves and getting fat, right? And then it has this sort of event horizon moment where it's fat enough, it encases itself in this chrysalis, and then its organs melt. Like
it becomes a liquid, basically.
Yeah.
Inside that chrysalis.
And then when it comes out as the butterfly, like its motor function is to fly and like find pollen and stuff. So it's like completely different sort of goal set. But it's using the DNA signal that came from the caterpillar, and it has to sort of know like, well, eating leaves isn't our thing anymore. Getting fat, like it has to sort of like make it. And he goes, really, if you think of like, he didn't use the JPEG idea, but like that information had to be compressed, and stored like in the thing, and then like when during the liquid phase,
right,
then it had to be uncompressed and like analyzed, and like the valid parts have to be applied. You know what I mean? Like you have to sort of set aside certain things. And it made me think a lot about like our own like carrying trauma forward. Like how to get rid of trauma. Like you have to sort of analyze, because the reason we stored it was there was some survival benefit.
Yeah.
Like don't remember not to go to the watering hole by yourself because a lion might jump on your back, that kind of thing. And it's 4 times easier to remember a traumatic thing than like a good memory, right? It's just easier to uptake and store the memory. So anyway, I find that fascinating, and just the idea of like our consciousness in some ways is this signal that can be packetized. I mean, even our own sort of inherited genes from our parents is some way a signal that has been compressed down to this like very simple, DNA chain. And then we have to sort of figure out what to do with it,
Yeah, I mean, I was to that point, I was just kind of thinking as you were talking about the caterpillar and the chrysalis and the butterfly, and I love how you referred to it as an event horizon moment. In a way, like, I mean, I was just trying to compare that to, I was kind of just sort of putting that up against the development of, let's say, a human, right, from infancy to adulthood, and we go through these different shifts, obviously, that are more gradual, that aren't as striking. We never kind of like go into a chrysalis and become liquid and then reemerge, right? Like, but we're constantly changing, right? Like what you lived on as an infant is different than what you live on now, and these different things, right? Your values can change. All these different things can change, and we don't. I guess we don't sort of like, we don't look at that as the same thing because it happens bit by bit, gradually, versus like this very striking kind of phase where you go into a chrysalis and then you reboot yourself. Which is different. So I wonder whether there's like a fundamental difference there between how information is encoded and, like the changes. I don't know. It's interesting to think about because I was just trying to think like, is it really fundamentally different what a butterfly goes through than what like any other organism goes through as it changes, or the larval stage of any insect, becoming then a different thing? I wonder how fundamentally the same or different it is.
Back to the, that's interesting, man. Back to the Buddhist thing. One of the things I used to do is I would say, hey, we'd be talking about reincarnation or karma, right? And I would say, I'm not, it's hard for me to buy the sort of past life, but I can think of like my karmic error as a teenager or my karmic error as a 21-year-old, let's say, was to not really dig deep. It was to be reliant on a feedback loop. Do other people think I'm smart, good, funny, like kind? And I was like living in this identity that was based on the feedback loop. And that was my karmic error. And then I went through this period where I had to let go of that or like redefine what the feedback loop meant to me. And then like really kind of dig deep in who am I, like without that, And they would be like, that's not exactly what we imagine, but I can see how, I can see that's like a nice construct because like the kind of the past life is like me at 11.
Your own past self of this incarnation. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's feel like if I met
not a past incarnation. Yeah.
Have you ever sort of fantasized about if you ever sat down with yourself at 21 over a coffee, like what the conversation would be like? Like, would you be best friends?
I find that whole, like we've talked about this a few times, just it's super fascinating to me, just that I am the same person I was at 5 years old or 7 years old or 15 years old. Like I am and I am not, right? There's something persistent that is me, that was me and is still me. And then there's so much else that has changed. And I'm super, super interested to understand what that persistent thing is. But this notion of sitting down with your past self, another version of that I have heard recently. There was a woman on TikTok, I think, that posted a video that went kind of viral, and I've heard lots of people kind of refer to it. But it's the idea of taking, like in this moment, it's the opposite. It's the inverse of what you talked about. Instead of talking to your past self, it's imagining your future self talking to you now. And it's this exercise this woman kind of came up with to kind of find gratitude and peace in the current moment. And her exercise is this. Basically, it's in a moment where you're feeling maybe that you're not grateful for this moment or you're not satisfied with this moment or whatever. She imagines herself at, say, 93 coming back and sort of talking to you, like yourself as a 93-year-old. If that self came back and saw this moment and talked to you about it, what would that person say about this moment? And the idea is just that this moment is a miracle. And so like from that 93-year-old perspective, the idea is that 93-year-old you would be able to recognize that this moment is a miracle, whatever this moment contains, that it is a miracle and it's part of that future trajectory. But anyway, I'm not kind of doing it justice, but I like that idea. I love that idea. I'll post it in the show notes because I'm not. Yeah. I'm not doing it justice in my description of it for whatever reason.
I want to check that out. It's true. I have been following on Instagram an account. I don't remember where I found it, but it was called "You're Going to Die," spelled Y-E-R, Going to Die, and it's just this poet who writes. Usually, like types it out with an old typewriter and then just publishes the little statement. Just sort of a reminder, like if you were to at any moment stop and be like, I am going to die. How does that change my the calculus in this moment? How does it change my motivation?
I think that's the same idea. That's the very same idea, is that like that 93-year-old person is close to the end of their life. That 93-year-old you is close to the end of your life. And so is able to recognize the significance of this moment, 40 years earlier or 30 years earlier or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting. For some reason, I wanted to go back to the wrestler's cruel study and just say, do you remember that there was a subplot or some kind of like plot point about the mole people, like people living in the subway?
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember my cousin lived in New York, my cousin Naomi, and she knew the woman that wrote the book called Mole People. And she had gone down and literally like interviewed over 18 months or 2 years a vast community of people who actually survive in the subway and never come out. And even down to like levels where like it was like 3 levels below where the MTA actually maintains the tunnel.
Yeah.
Like it was like buildings that, and they're basically living off of rats.
Or like sub tunnels that were there maybe for construction of the actual, like those kinds of things.
Yeah, or abandoned tunnels.
Abandoned tunnels. I've heard that Manhattan had tunnels for cattle.
Oh, wow.
Did you know that?
I didn't know that, no.
That they would, because, like in order to feed New York beef and stuff, like they had tunnels that were basically used mainly by cattle to get cattle from outside the city into the city.
Wow, under the river? Like under the...
I don't know. I'll have to learn more about it. I think it was in that book, Luc Sante's book. Remember that? I can't remember the name of his book about Lower Manhattan, but just, you were talking about the sort of that feedback, living with that feedback loop, your former self, right? Like wanting to know what people think of you. And it just made me think of something about Japan that my travels in Japan recently, and people were, one of the things, so I was reading up on Japan and looking at a lot of travel tips and things like that before we left. And one of the videos I saw was this Japanese tour guide. He was a Japanese guy who was born in Japan, lived in the US for a while, then moved back to Japan and became a tour guide. He almost had no Japanese accent. He sounded like an American kid, but he was, Japanese American, whatever. The interviewer asked him, is it true that the Japanese don't like tourists? And he basically sort of answered, some sort of details about like different scenarios where tourists can be annoying, whatever. But then one of the things he said was that one of the things that's interesting about the Japanese people is that they care, like the reason why they are, kind of, maybe the world sees them as conformist or kind of like, like the Japanese are quiet and they follow rule. Oh, was a guy talking about, actually, this is a separate video. It was a different video I saw because now I'm remembering where this came from. It was a guy talking about jaywalking in Japan. And he was responding to a video from a tourist, like standing at a crosswalk, like filming himself standing at a crosswalk in Japan where there was a no, don't walk signal, and there was just no cars in sight anywhere and no other people in sight anywhere. And he's like, what is it with Japanese people that can't cross the street when that light is red? Like there's nobody here. But I'm feeling like I can't cross the street and I'm in Japan right now. And then there was a Japanese guy responding to that and going, yeah, we want to cross the street too. He said, the thing about Japanese people though is that we care so deeply what everyone else thinks about us. We can't stop obsessing about what other people are thinking about us in every moment. And it's just kind of an interesting thing. Like it's a whole culture of what you just described about your past self. It's just like that. And I remember there were a lot of scenarios where, because the Japanese are very quiet on trains and on, the subways, the metro, even the street, right? And so, and train stations, right? There was a lot of moments where when you're traveling with a family and you're like trying to find your connection in the metro, it's like, oh, you get off one train and you're like looking for the signs and like, oh, we need to go to that one, right? And you're trying to navigate through the station to get to your other subway line or whatever. There's constantly these moments where you want to turn around and go, hey, that's, you point to a sign. That's our train right there. We just need to find that one, right? But I felt so self-conscious about like, I don't want to be the loud American guy that's like yelling back to my wife and kids, like, follow me to that one, right? Like there were, or just even on the train, like, what stop do we get off at? It's like, shh. Like I felt so self-conscious about every moment that I was being a little bit louder than everybody else because I didn't want to be the stereotype of the loud American. But there are so many times when you're traveling where you're like, I don't know this place and my wife is 10 feet behind me and I need her to follow me through this crowd to this, because everything's crowded. You're walking through these thick crowds and like you're walking with the stream and it's like, oh, I need to cross the river of people. I need to push through sideways across the stream to get to that other hallway or whatever, that other corridor. And I need to get their attention, right? But I don't want to be loud. So there are a lot of those moments. Anyway.
My sister lived in a little town called Tsu. I think it's TSU or TZU. And it's a fishing village on the south.
It'd be TSU, yeah.
Yeah. Fishing village down south. And it was her partner or a common law husband at the time was from Madrid, and he was a marine biologist at Scripps. And he was he needed to study whale DNA from the mom and the baby. Like he needed both.
Yeah.
So it was the reason they went there, he got a grant to go there because it was one of Norway and Japan were still whaling. Like they were still the two nations that hadn't banned whaling. And so they would bring in, the catch, and he would take DNA from the baby and the mom. Anyway, so she's living there, and she said, I was asking, I never went to visit. I really should have, but I had little kids, and it seemed like a real stretch. Like it just didn't seem possible at the time. But she said one of the things was that there was organized crime. Like there was like, I forget the name of, not the
Yakuza.
The Yakuza, and there was like people bribing and extorting other people, but there was no like petty crime. Like like she would go to the park and no one had a bike lock. Like you would leave your bike.
Right. None of the bikes are locked. Yeah.
Yeah. And she would say like,
there's like virtually no shoplifting, anything like that. Yeah.
And it's just like cultural thing. Like no one will commit that kind of crime. And so you just don't have it. It was like really fascinating.
What's interesting is when you learn about like there is a deeply impoverished sort of underground of Japan.
Huh.
And they do, to survive, they do shoplift and steal and it does happen, but it's almost like it's an invisible subculture. Like it's totally invisible to, there was a documentary I watched about like a couple of families that were part of that sort of like deeply impoverished subculture of Japan. And I think that, partly because there is so little petty crime that those people can kind of get away with it because it's just nobody's watching for it. Nobody's sort of on guard against it. But I think also like that there's almost like this sort of like permission to those people. It's like, oh, they need it to survive, so we're just going to look at it. Like to the extent that it might even be that it might be noticeable at all. I think it's sort of like permitted almost, you know what I mean? Because I did see I saw one homeless encampment in Tokyo, which I was very surprised to see. Like, I don't know, it was only one, and maybe that's partly why it was surprising. Coming here from San Francisco, where we have a few areas that are very, high concentration of homeless encampments. But there was a one kind of probably about 10 homeless people living under this one overpass.
I remember reading years ago that the most expensive acreage in the planet is the Emperor's Grounds in the middle of Tokyo. It's like worth $3 trillion or something, and it's just because it's like a large, his castle, or I guess he has like a kind of like a grounds in the middle. very hard, expensive city to live in, right? Like, I mean, if you can imagine if
Yeah.
you lost your job. So I was going to tell you. So years ago, I was dating one of the women in the Buddhist community out here that was had an ashram like an hour east of us, and I remember I would spend a lot of time out there, and I remember having this idea for like a sort of reality show / comic series.
Okay.
Because a lot of people would come from New York and they'd like come and start volunteering and like live out in this commune and stuff. And I had this thought where like, imagine if they brought along one of their friends, and everyone's always trying to like gain karmic points when they're there. Like you go to, you know what I mean? Like they open the door and they're like, after you, and they give you, like they're trying to get, so I had this idea that this guy is just like, oh my God, I can take advantage of everyone. Like everyone just gives, like I don't want any karmic points.
What a bunch of easy marks these people
exactly.
are.
Like it's like, and it just would be
funny.
a funny premise for like the sort of the grading, like, and because a lot of times people would look and they say, this guy is a real asshole. And then their lama, their teacher would be like, so look at yourself and like imagine.
I love the idea
like,
of that as a reality show with like they have those clips on reality shows where people are in their confessional closet or whatever, and they're doing their own like little monologue to the camera. And there's always that cliche of the person's like, I'm not here to make friends, I'm here to win, right? Like I could hear like everybody else doing some like very sort of like beautiful spiritual thing that they're saying to the camera, and that one guy, like, I'm not here to make friends.
Yeah. So one of the mean sort of pin things I would do to the Buddhists is we'd be having like a dinner, and there'd be like yoga people, and then these the Buddhists. There was kind of an overlap between yoga teachers at our studios here, and then people that lived at the commune or went to the commune. And so they talk. One of Geshe Michael Roach's famous, very simple ways of explaining emptiness is he'll hold up a pen. I don't have a pen, and he'd say, "What is this?" It's a pen, and he goes, "Well, now I hold it down in front of my dog." And it's a chew toy. So where does the penness come from? It's coming from your own mind. Like you're projecting penness, the utility of writing, with that object. You're projecting it onto the pen, and there's no penness inherently in the pen. That's his thing. Like he loves to, he brings that up at every lecture, So I would be like, just pull back one extra level, and like we're projecting onto your concept of emptiness, like we're projecting, like we're making up this idea of karma, like it's all made up, like there's no karma, like everything you're saying doesn't exist because I just made it up. If that's
a construct, then everything else is also a construct.
Exactly, right? And it infinitely goes back, kind of like when you're, you put on your tab and your Google thing goes, like it just goes back and back, and they would be like, like there's no real argument for that, because you're like, I don't know,
right? Where does it stop?
Yeah, where there's no, and then but anyway, that's why I would end up being like, it makes more sense to me to think of my life as being this series of moments where I could sort of, back to Michael Levine saying, like where I could basically take a snapshot, like how like a sampler is looking at the song, like turning music into digital samples. You're just basically like taking a slice of time and then recording what it looked like then, and then you can have, so really like if I go back and like take a sample of me at 11, me at 21, me at 30, and what did I not know, what was I struggling with, what were my goals, and there are certainly times when let's say you came down with, you had cancer and you survived it, or I went through a divorce, and it was very much that chrysalis kind of like rebirth thing, like there were a lot of ways in which I sort of had to reboot from like an event horizon, and to take that forward to our, like I like to sort of project that kind of concept onto our democracy, like and onto the history of, the political realm now. Yeah. And I have this friend who had said, like, Donald Trump is a novel virus. Yeah. That has infected democracy. And the democracy's immune system needs to create memory cells like T cells and like cells that can handle the virus before it kills the host. And I like that idea because we talked last time about Ken Burns saying like this country has been a history of rupture and repair.
Yeah.
And so, and you talked about what is persistent. What's the persistent through line? What are the variants? Like constants and variants.
Yeah.
And they're always changing. But what's interesting is, so basically that I like to project onto what's going on with our democracy. And it's possible that, like yesterday the EPA said we're no longer going to track climate change.
Yeah.
So to me, it feels like
it's just a daily barrage.
It's a daily assault on
it's a
like
fire hose of stupidity and corruption and self-inflicted wounds. It's hard. But so like continue what your thought.
Well, and in some ways, and I'm not calling for like, I'm not like an anarchist who's calling to like burn the whole thing down. But in some ways, there's like a temptation. If we were playing Mario Kart 3 and it got this bad, I might just turn it off and turn it back on.
Oh,
like,
for sure. I mean, so like I wrote a thing a couple of posts ago on my Armchair Pundit. I wrote something called "The Only Way Out Is Through," or I don't know if that was the subtitle, but like that's a phrase that keeps going through my head. And as I've been reading about like, I've been sort of obsessively reading about other countries that went through their rupture and repair. Like I read Wild Swans about Maoist China. I read a book about Stalinist Russia. I read a book recently called Hitler's Willing Executioners about Germany, right? And so these different examples of rupture and repair. So like the phrase that keeps going through my head is kind of to your point, is that it feels like the only way out of this is through it. Like we need to, it's kind of like, I guess it's in a way, like it's a version of fuck around and find out. It's like, there's part of me that sort of feels like the people who thought they wanted this are reality is going to hit them in the face at some point. It's going to hit all of us. And so like even the people who thought they wanted this are going to realize that they don't want this. Right. And so, but like the only way to get there is for it to sort of hit bottom, right? Like an alcoholic or anything else, you got to sort of hit bottom before you can start fixing shit. And so like, it feels like we kind of have to go there. Like the phrase that keeps going through my head is the only way out of this is through it. The thing that I have a hard time with acknowledging that reality or that idea is just the idea of how many people will be sacrificed in the rupture phase, which, it would be nice if you could avoid that. Like there's a lot of people who are being sacrificed currently. We have fucking concentration camps in Florida, right? For people who didn't do anything wrong. We sent people to like a prison in El Salvador who didn't do anything to deserve that, right? So we are daily sacrificing people to the rupture, which I'm not really at peace with that. Like we might recover from this in a large way, but a lot of people won't recover from this. A lot of people will be sacrificed in the process, which, I have a hard time with that.
Well, one interesting thing for me, because I often talk about the 3 days of the condor, like the idea that you could like be a writer and come up, like have an active imagination. And I imagine like, and to be perfectly honest, like I can imagine like if I was Stephen Miller, I could be if I was evil and I was Stephen Miller, I could very quickly take us down like a very dark road. You know what I mean? Like I just know what I would do. Fascinatingly enough, like I look at this administration and it feels like, unlike Goebbels and Hitler, like unlike, it feels like a comedy of dunces.
It feels like stupid Hitler.
Yeah, it's very stupid. It's like Hitler if Hitler was Beavis and Butthead.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Stupid Hitler. We're in stupid Hitler. And I mean, this idea that Trump is a novel virus, like my pushback on that is that I don't think Trump is the virus. I think Trump is one of the symptoms of the virus, right?
Sure,
like that's how I look at Trump. And I mean, I remember fucking Newt Gingrich, and I remember like, I don't know, I remember Fox News at the beginning of the Iraq War, and this, you know, this like real America versus everybody else, like this sort of like Sarah Palin, real America thing.
Freedom
like,
fries.
Right, like freedom fries, like dipshit stuff like that, freedom fries, right? I remember this idea that like if you weren't gung-ho about bombing Iraq and going into this stupid conflict, you were somehow unpatriotic. You were a traitor to America, right? Like this sort of bloodlust that followed 9/11. There were a lot of things on the right that I feel like it's easy to draw a line from that stuff to Trump. You know, Trump is just sort of the apotheosis of all that. He's not the cause of any of it. He's the apotheosis.
I agree, and for instance, he's enabled by this vast, you know, this almost solid majority of people in the House and the Senate that are just, I mean,
who are in turn enabled by the base that they're afraid to, you know, go against, the cult, right? Like they created the cult through through right-wing news propaganda, all that. Russian intervention was part of it, right? There was Russian influence there, but like, you know, is Congress, how many of those people in Congress are true believers of MAGA versus just people who know that in order to stay in their seats, they need to keep pandering to this cult? Who knows? Okay,
so while you were gone, and I know we're at...
I was going to say, what did I miss? Like from Hamilton, what did I miss?
Yeah. So what's fascinating is you missed like 2 weeks of just full-on shot in front. So you know about like the Wall Street Journal has published two articles.
I've been hearing about
Epstein.
Epstein shit and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Wall Street Journal publishes this Epstein article, basically saying that like Donald Trump wrote Epstein a birthday card where he drew a picture of naked woman. Blah, blah. Super crude and weird.
And I heard another thing about like Epstein got one of his girls from Mar-a-Lago or something.
Well, that's what's really weird is that Donald Trump said that yesterday on the plane. Like he's basically, he said, I kicked him. We were friends, but then
I barely knew the guy. He just got one of my employees from my spa. Like what?
Well, no. What's terrible is what he said was yesterday on the plane coming back from Scotland. He said he basically wasn't even prompted. Like he said it. I think he's going through like a sort of weird guilt meltdown thing. But he used to say his line was, Jeffrey did something to one of the daughters of one of my club members at Mar-a-Lago, and so I banned him from the club. That was his line for a while. Now he says he was poaching my employees.
Oh. And
then he said I told him not to do it, and he did it again. And one of the reporters said, "Was it Virginia Guffrey?" And he goes, "Yeah, I think it was Virginia. Yeah, it was Virginia." So basically, it's like he stole the young underage women from his spa.
Yeah.
And that's what severed the friendship.
One of the reasons I'm not following this, so like I hear the Schadenfreude thing, but one of the reasons I'm not following this is because like there's part of me that's just projecting forward to what feels like an inevitable, like there's nothing Trump can do, like I can shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue, right? Like I feel like at some point the MAGA base will figure out how to assimilate this and still be okay with Trump. You know what I mean? Like no matter what. Like I sort of feel like there is no limit. Part of me thinks there is no limit. So like I don't want to see one more thing sort of like floated out there as this will be the thing that ends Trump, because I've seen that 200 times now.
No,
and it has never ended the guy, right?
I totally
So like there's part of me that goes like, also there's part of me that's like, there are so many 200 things like for the people who are like, seem to be legitimately bothered by this in Trump world. It's like, wait, you weren't bothered by these other 200 things, right? Like you're cool with these other, And now this is finally the thing that crossed. Like, there's part of me that's like, cool. I'm glad something seems to be crossing the line. But there's another part of me that's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? That like you were okay. This is where your line is, and it wasn't like 200 things ago. Plus,
Totally.
like, there's been pictures of Trump with Epstein. Like, he has more pictures with Epstein than most people have with their parents. Like, there's more pictures of Trump and Epstein together than there are pictures of me with my parents. You know what I mean? Like,
Totally.
Like, this isn't new information.
I know. Okay, so that's one of the reasons.
So those are all the reasons why I'm not following it, and it bothers me. Sorry, go ahead.
I totally understand. And while you were gone, though, like, back to my thing of like, it's the Confederacy of dunces. Like, it seems like if I look at the way these guys, he brought in Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, and Bongino, were all like podcasters who were into QAnon.
Obsessed with Epstein.
Yeah.
Among other things.
And their sort of wet dream was, can put us in charge and we're going to expose everything.
We're going to expose all this stuff and we're going to get all those Democrats.
And what's fascinating...
Somehow forgetting the fact that there's like 1,000 pictures of Trump with Epstein.
Yeah. So what's fascinating to me is like how bizarrely botched this... Like I could have just very sat down and in half an hour written out, like, here are the steps to make... it about Democrats. Here's what you shouldn't do. Like, don't have your personal lawyer fly down to like interview Ghislaine Maxwell. Like, and then don't like release a tape with like missing minutes about the like. Why you could just be like, hey man, there's so many.
I mean, you think they could have strategized? Like, if they were truly smart and evil, they could have strategized. Like, okay, we're going to put out a fake Epstein list. We're going to have this whole reveal. It's going to be all Democrats. Like, they could have conspired to do that.
And truth be told,
and then strategized and done it this smart sort of like evil. It makes me think of like back in D&D days. There's like different alignments. There's like lawful evil was like the smart and evil, and then there was like chaotic evil. they're chaotic evil.
But what's weird is even if you're not smart enough to deal with it, like if you come into office and you're like, holy shit, what do I do? You have enough money at your disposal to hire like the best crisis management firm to like hold your hand as you walk through this shit. But like they just start to, I guess, have the arrogance to think like they can handle it. And and what's fascinating,
but they don't have the ability. They don't have the intelligence to actually handle it. Yeah.
Yeah. And what's fascinating to me is that, okay, so that's the first thing that you kind of missed was this whole thing that blew up. And it was started with Rupert Murdoch owns the Wall Street Journal. Mm-hmm. The Wall Street Journal released 2 of the articles, and Trump sued them for like $10 billion, And everyone was like, have you heard of the term discovery? Like, exactly. You don't necessarily want to.
No.
Want
you start to sue these people, they're gonna. Yeah, they get to discover shit. Yeah, it's so dumb.
Yeah. Wait. So then, did you hear about last week the whole deal with Paramount and Redstone? What's her name? Shari Redstone. She wants. Okay.
Yeah.
So Shari Redstone inherited
about the deal. But,
so she inherits Paramount from her husband, right? When he dies.
There was some merger that supposedly, like the reason why Colbert was fired and all this. Yeah.
She wants to sell Paramount to Larry Ellison's Skydance. Like he's super MAGA, his son is MAGA. So she wants to sell it to Skydance, and she would make herself $2 billion in profit, like just from the sale, right? And she needs permission from the FCC because they're 2 giant studios that create content.
Yeah.
So she knows she's like in front of the FCC board, and she knows Trump can say to them, "No, they can't."
Right.
So
that's why they're kind of pandering to him. Yeah.
Yeah. So he sues her for. Do you remember how 60 Minutes was interviewing Kamala Harris? Yeah. And I don't know if you followed this, but like in his suit, what he's basically claiming is, they edited her interview on her sort of answer on Gaza to look less clunky.
Yeah.
And that hurt my feelings and made me scared. Like it made me as a candidate anxious because she looked smart. You know what I mean? Like that was
that's the argument he's making. Yeah.
For the $16 million, you owe me $16 million in
the argument
pain
I've heard
suffering.
is kind of just it's unfair that you edited her, but not me, kind of thing.
But the pain and suffering goes
pain and suffering.
Yeah,
okay.
he actually was
a pain and suffering argument.
That's the $16 million, right? Like they owe him for the pain he went through.
I see.
thinking she was smart when she's not. You know what I mean? Okay, that's okay. So pretty. So Colbert. So Colbert makes
The
fun
guy
of
has
her.
he has no shame at all. Anyway,
I know.
as
So
we know.
Colbert makes fun of Shari Redstone for paying this bribe. Trump calls her and says, "Fire the motherfucker." And she says, she doesn't fire him right away. She says, "Your show is shutting down in next May."
Right.
So you basically have like,
Which is kind of like in a kind of a cool way. Like I don't watch TV much, but like I want to see what the Colbert completely off the leash would look like.
she basically winks at him and says like, "Dude, you have another season and you're off the leash now because you can't be fired again."
Right.
And I absolve
It's
myself.
like having
of responsibility.
senioritis. He's got a whole year of senioritis.
Right. Yes, exactly. Okay, so this is what happens next. This is last Thursday. Were you back? When did you come back?
Yeah, 2 days ago.
Okay, yeah. So you were out of the country. So last Thursday, they announced, like at the end of the day, that the Shari Redstone, the merger is approved. That Paramount can sell to Skydance.
Yeah.
So that's settled. They paid the $16 million, and then they get right. So then she makes a deal with South Park
Okay.
for 1.2 or 1.5.
Oh, and then they go out and
billion.
make that crazy episode, which I
It
heard
was
about.
already-
I haven't watched that. Yeah.
What's crazy is she made the deal with them on Thursday night, and like basically she gets to stream 23 years of their stuff and the new season. And the next day, Friday, is the first episode of this season. And that's where they just go after Trump like crazy, and they even have like a PSA ad where he's stumbling
The
through
ad
the
at
desert.
the end going through the desert. I did see
and
that
his
clip.
penis has like eyes on it. And,
Yeah.
and so he said he was going to sue them, and they
Tiny
were like,
little penis. Yeah.
and they were like, it's easy because we just measure it, and if it's small, we win. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
Like if you want to claim that your penis isn't small. So anyway, what's so funny is she basically is like saying, "Fuck you, Donald. I gave you $60 million."
Apparently Shari Redstone is playing like a little more of a clever game than maybe we gave her credit for. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, she could have said, "Hey, let me see that episode before you." Oh no, my lawyers say you can't release it. She just let them off the leash. I mean, they got to make the episode, release it the day after the contract was signed, the day after the FCC thing. And so, yeah, that's for me. That's the crazy series of events around that.
Wow.
And even in the episode, Jesus is in.
Yeah.
Trump is suing South Park.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesus is saying in the speech, like a Sermon on the Mount, he's like, "Yo, you guys, you got to just fucking pay him because look what happened to Colbert, motherfucker." Like he's just saying, it's so good, man. It's like the best.
All right.
Content.
Okay. So that's what I missed.
That's what you missed.
We're at more than an hour. Do you want to
1:13.
do? You want to end on some first world problems, or
Let's end on some first world problems.
okay? I'll do mine sort of Japan theme.
All right.
A little bit of a stereotype of the person who returns from Japan and then has to sort of pretend that. Anyway, so but I will say the things I'm just going to name a couple things that I will miss, and that are not things I would have identified as first world problems. But having experienced Japanese toilets for 3 weeks, the hype is real. I mean. Yeah, I mean South Park actually did a pretty funny thing on Japanese toilets some episodes ago, some years ago. But I can put that in the show notes as well. But yeah, they have the bidet, right? You have like nozzle direction and pressure, and different bidet options. You got a deodorizer button on some toilets.
Are these the ones where you're standing on the floor and there's a hole below you?
No, those are squatty toilets.
Oh, those
we
are
did encounter one of those, but those are more like, no, the Japanese toilets are like the $3,000 toilets with the seat is pre-warmed for you, and there's music you can play to cover the sounds of your own business, and there's like bidets of different strengths and directions for different. There's a front bidet for women, front washing. There's butt washing. There's One of the toilets we had in one of our hotels had a dryer option too. So like after the bidet wash, you could just press the dry button.
That makes so much sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So like very clean, like the Japanese toilets. The other thing, you know, and you and I experienced to some degree when we lived in New York, but just having public transit that works and can get you anywhere. I mean, that's pretty sweet and is affordable, right?
Yeah.
Like so affordable, widely sprawling public transit, fast, the Shinkansen to get you from city to city, the metro and the rails to get you around the cities, the buses, like we took lots of buses in Kyoto. The subway is not as extensive there, but in Osaka and Tokyo, like the combination of subway and rail, holy shit. Like it's just so nice.
So wait, let me just understand. So your first world problem is that you don't have Japanese.
Now I'm back in, like dirty buses that take forever to get anywhere, that don't
terrible
go
toilets, no
parts of
bidets,
the city. Yeah, like the public transit in the toilet. I got, nobody's washing my butt now after I do my business, right? Like it's kind of nice, like to have that for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
So anyway, my first world problem is being back in this first world country versus Japan's level of first world country, which is, I think, just like in certain ways, a couple levels more first than we are.
Yeah. Let's see. My first world problem. It's more just. So I'm trying to plan a trip to meet my dad in Toronto, and his new half sister, is going to meet us there. And then we're going to go up to the Muskoka Lake region with some cousins of my dad's. Everyone's like over 75 in their mid 80s, And I'm going to go along sort of as a chaperone for my dad.
Yeah, yeah.
And, there's like, as a son I'm 56, my dad's 81. Like there's a point at which you're starting to see that like certain aspects of a complex trip like this, I need to take over because my dad just doesn't have the, you know what I mean? Like, the capacity to make all the, the little details. And it's interesting to me. I've always wondered, like, will there be
that's sort of like a testament to what you were saying about how your dad's become so chill. Like in some ways, he's just kind of intentionally let go of those kinds of, like some ways it might be a capacity issue, just being old and like not cognitively there for a certain level. But some of it might just be like, his chillness has sort of allowed him to just release control and release this concern about those kinds of things, which means it's up to somebody else to deal with.
Yeah. No, and like there was a period in my dad's life where he was sort of OCD, super analytical.
Exactly.
Like there was a famous story where he and my little brother were traveling to DC or something, and some event happened where like the bus system or the train system that they were on collapsed, or maybe like the communications or with the ticket system. And so my dad ended up, there was like a whole bunch of like really distraught people in this train station. And my dad ended up sort of like saying like, let's just organize it ourselves. And like he had like sticky notes, and they were like, you're going to go on this train and I'm going to then get off it. And people were like,
that was your dad's wheelhouse, that kind of thing.
Totally.
Yeah, for sure.
And now it's sort of like, I'm not that guy, but
no,
but
you have to be.
I have to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my first world problem.
That's your karma, to weave it back to karma, because I remember being that for you in some ways, for us, a little bit in high school. Yeah. And I was a space case before that. Like I wasn't good at scheduling and being on time and stuff, but you were just enough worse at me than that I had to kind of step up to a certain degree, I think, in our friendship and be a little bit of that guy.
I get to, so with my wife, because
would you agree with that? I don't want to mischaracterize our youth.
No. That's super true. And I think it just naturally, if there's resonance, it naturally happens. Like for instance, I'm always a little bit late and running late. Yeah. But my wife is twice as late as me. So I become the one who goes and waits in the car.
That's
and it's like, beep, and I turn the car around and I'm waiting with the door, and she comes running out.
I don't picture that with Julie. I mean, with your wife. I picture I don't picture her being, I picture her being like the opposite. It's interesting.
Well, when we first started dating, she told me that, and this is like one of those stereotypes, like Colombians are always running late.
I see.
And like we'd meet up, her friends would be like, let's meet up for drinks at 10. And then we'd go there and they wouldn't show up until midnight. and they'd be like, "Hey, we just got there." Like it,
That's a stereotype of like my wife's culture too. They talk about Filipino time, and but she is like she is on it. Like I have been able to. I'll just give a shout out to her and how much organizing she did for our trip and like organizing our itinerary and whatnot. But
nice.
Anyway, we should probably end it there.
3 cheers. Satellite Haiku, great to be back at it with you.
Good to talk to you.
And welcome back to the States.
All right, my brother.
All right, take care. All right, bye-bye.
Satellites? A satellite represents a journey, information gathering, this journey around the Earth.